We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis in Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 83b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said that let's say a person is sick and all they have in front of them is tevel. So if it's possible to separate the truma and only give the person the chulin, of course that's preferable. But then there's a machlokas. Let's say that's not possible. The chulin will not be enough. So then it's a machlokas. Is truma better, or is it better to give the tevel itself and just not separate? So the Gemara says efshar b'chulin. If it's possible to give chulin, you should give chulin. Pshita, that seems totally obvious. Of course you should do that. The chulin will be completely kosher. Why shouldn't you separate truma and just give the person the chulin? And the Gemara says, lo, no tzricha is needed b'Shabbos. We're talking specifically on Shabbos. Rashi over here says, lo tzricha b'Shabbos shafilu hu Shabbos she'aser lahafresh truma u'maiser. Even if it's Shabbos where it's actually aser in general to separate trumas and maisers on Shabbos, yafrishuha v'lo yachilu tevalim. It's better to separate, violate that prohibition on Shabbos rather than feed the person who is sick, rather than feed him tevel. So the Gemara says, one second, b'Shabbos nami pshita. Even on Shabbos it should be obvious, tiltul midrabbananu, because at most, what is the separation of truma? It's just a violation midrabbanan. There's no iser doraisa to separate truma and meiser on Shabbos. So therefore, of course, it's going to be permitted. So the Gemara says, no, it's not so obvious. The case over here is that it's not even really truma or tevel on a doraisa level. This is a plant that was put in a pot, and the pot does not have a hole. The halacha is if it's not getting nutrients from the ground, really it's not tevel on a doraisa level. You only need to separate trumas and meisers on a drabonon level. So now we have a real shaila. Should we feed the person the tevel or the truma, or should we say, or actually the tevel, should we feed the person the tevel, or should we say violate the drabonon and separate truma? In this case, both situations really are only midrabanan. You feed tevel, it's only tevel midrabanan. You separate, it's only separating truma, is only a problem on Shabbos midrabanan. Chiddush is, it's better to separate and turn it into chulin. Rashi over here says, bi'artz sheino nakav the tevel shalom midrabanan. It's only tevel midrabanan. Ushavuz the hafrashas meisers b'Shabbos derabanan. And again, the separation of meisers is also only derabanan. So ashminan sheyidcha hashvus v'lo yachilu tevel derabanan. With the chiddush is, you should in fact separate the truma and give the person chulin. Don't give him tevel midrabanan. Da'asu lemishri nami tevel doraisa ki agavna. Because if you allow that, then people will get confused. And even in a situation of tevel doraisa, they're going to feed the person tevel doraisa. That, of course, would be a problem. And so again, the Gemara continues, mar savar tevel chamura, mar savar truma chamura. Again, in a situation where it's not possible to give the person chulin, one says it's better to give tevel, and the other one says it's better to separate and give the individual the chulin together with the truma. And the Gemara now says, Lema Tanoi, let's say this is actually a machlokas Tanoim. Now Rashi over here explains, Lema Tanoi, hach de Rabba. This statement of Rabba, de Omar b'de efshar b'chulin misakninon lei. Rabba is the one that said that if it's possible to give the sick individual just chulin, that's what we should do. V'dachinon shvos da'afrashas truma b'Shabbos mekami achilas tevel da'artzat sheino nakav d'Rabbanan. Even in a situation where it's only tevel midrabbanan, because it's in a pot that has no hole, it's in an artzat sheino nakav, even in that situation, it's better to separate the truma and give the individual the chulin, even if it's Shabbos. You violate the Yisur D'Rabbanan of separating truma on Shabbos. So let us say that actually is a machlokas Tanoim. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Misha neshacho nachash koren lo rofe mimakam l'makam. Let's say a person is bitten by a snake, and Rashi over here says we're talking even on Shabbos. You call the person a doctor; he can come from one place to the other. Umekarin lo as a tarnagolas. You're also allowed to tear open the chicken. Rashi over here says mekorin lo tarnagolas lose salamaka. You place it on the wound. Shazuhi refuah. So this is one of the ways of healing a situation where a person gets a snake bite. The goes is in low as hakrishin. You're also allowed to cut the krishin. Rashi over here says the goes is in low krishin min ha-mechuber la'achilo. We're talking on Shabbos. You're allowed to cut krishin even from the mechuber, which normally you're not allowed to cut. You're not allowed to harvest on Shabbos. Here you're allowed to do that, and you're allowed to feed it to him. Umachilano, so you could feed it to him. Ve'ein tzarich la'aser divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says there's no need to take off meiser in this situation. Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon Omer, Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon disagrees and says lo yochal ad sheyaser. The individual should not eat it until you actually take off the meiser. And now in this particular situation, we're talking specifically about creation, which are leeks, which are a type of vegetable. Those are not chayiv in truma and meiser on a doraisa level. It's only a derabanan level, so it's very similar to an otzitz she'eno nakav. And what do you have over here? You have a machlokas on Shabbos whether or not you should take off meiser. According to Rebbe, you should not take off the meiser. According to Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, you should. Rav is the one that said that you should take off. It seems like he follows Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon. So name Rebbe Elazar, Rebbe Shimon, he v'lo Rebbe. Let us say that Rav Rabba will have to say only, what Rabba will have to follow only Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon, and not Rebbe. And so the Gemara answers, no, afilu tema Rebbe. You can even say that Rabba and Rebbe agree. Adkan lo kamar Rebbe hasam elul inyan meiser yerek derabanan. Over there, Rebbe says when you're talking about meiser yerek, which is midrabanan, so there you can let him have it as tevel midrabanan. Better to just feed him tevel midrabanan than to violate the isser and separate meiser, which is an isser derabanan. Aval b'meiser dagan the tevel do raiso. But when you're talking about meiser dagan, when you're talking about meiser of grain, where it's really tevel mida oraisa, had it not been in an atzat sheino nakov, afilu Rebbe moda. There even Rebbe agrees that you should separate the isharis le ba'atzat sheino nakov, meaning you should even separate the meiser if it's in an atzat sheino nakov, because there, if you're going to say otherwise, if you're going to say not to separate, so then asi lamechal ba'atzat sheino nakov, the person's going to get confused. He's not going to realize there's a difference between a pot with a hole and a pot without a hole. A pot, if you have a regular pot, no hole at the bottom, so that's only tevel midrabanan. There's no chiyuv to separate truma and meiser on a doraisa level. And if we tell the individual to eat that kind of tevel, they're going to think that's true in any kind of pot. Even if the pot has a hole, they can just have it. They'll think it's only tevel midrabanan, but that's not true. In an atzatz nakov, it's actually tevel doraisa. You certainly would have to separate the truma in that particular situation, and therefore Rebbe would agree that by a situation of an atzatz sheino nakov, the person should certainly separate the truma. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Misha achzu bulmus, let's say somebody, again, he has this disease called bulmus, he needs to eat food, ma'achilano so devash, v'chol mine mesika, you feed him honey, and you feed him other sweet kinds of things, sha'advash, v'chol mine mesika, mi'irin mo'orein of shaladam, when you give a person sweet foods, it improves a person's vision, which again is a way of healing the bulmus. V'afal b'shein rai l'davar zech l'davar, even though there's no proof to this, we do have a hint to this in the Navi. This is a pasuk in Shmuel, talking about Yonasan. It says, Ru'una kioru einai, ki to'amti ma'at dvash hazeh. Yonasan was hungry, and he says that my eyes have been lit up because I tasted some of this honey. Gemara says, why is that not a proof? It seems like a proof. Gemara says, no, dahasam lav bulmus achse. In that particular situation, he didn't have bulmus, he was just very hungry, so it's not a complete proof to the situation of bulmus. Amar Abaya says, lo shanu ala lachar achila. When we say that sweet food is effective to improve a person's vision, that's only after they ate something else. But if you eat something sweet or something like honey before you've eaten anything, it actually just makes a person more hungry. Like the pasuk says, "Vayimtzu ish mitzri basada vayichu." So David, they found an ish mitzri, brought him to David. Vayitnu lo lechem vayochal vayashku mayim vayitnu lo plach develu shnei tzimukim vayochal vatashav rucho elav. So the idea over here is that they gave him a bunch of food first. They gave him lechem and mayim, and then they gave him the honey. Then they gave him the sweet food, and then his soul was restored. Kiloacha lechem velo shasamayim shlosha yamim u'shlosha leilos, because the person had not eaten bread or water. He had not drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. The Gemara continues. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman says, in the name of Shmuel, Misha achzo bulmus ma'achilano so alya b'devash. Somebody has bulmus, they give him a tail of a sheep, and it's in honey, and again that's going to be a healing for the bulmus. Rav Huna bereid Rav Yoshua Amar Afsolas nikiya b'devash. Rav Huna bereid Rav Yoshua says you give him fine flour and honey, that also works. Rav Papa says afilu kimcha desari b'divsha, even if you give him barley flour with honey, that also works. Amar Rav Yochanan says pamachas achazani bulmus. There was one time when I had bulmus, and I went to the east side of the fig tree. The idea over here is that those figs are going to ripen faster because they're in direct contact with the sun, which rises in the east. Through this, I fulfilled the pasuk which says that if a person is wise, it allows a person to live, meaning I did something smart by looking for the ripe fruits on the tree. The Tani Rav Yosef, because Rav Yosef taught, if you want to taste the taste of the fig, go to the east side. Those are the ones that are going to ripen first. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, meged tevu al shamash. The sun, it makes the crops, it makes the fruits like a delicacy. So therefore, again, the idea is that on the east side, where the sun is, that's going to make the fruits ripen faster. And the Gemara continues with some stories. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi have a ka'azli be'urcha. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, they were traveling on the road. Achze bulmus le Rabbi Yehuda, so Rabbi Yehuda got bulmus. So kipche l'roa achle l'rifta. So what they did was, they found a shepherd and they forced him to give bread. Rashi over here says, kipche kafu, they forced him, and natal kikaru heimenu, they took the loaf from him. In other words, it was a situation of sakanas nefashas. It was a situation of life and death, danger, so therefore they were allowed to steal the bread from this particular roa. So Amar le Rabbi Yossi, so Rabbi Yossi said to Rabbi Yehuda, kipachta saroa, you just stole from this shepherd. So kimatu lamasa, when they arrived in the city, Achse Bulmis Rabbi Yossi. Then Rabbi Yossi got Bulmis. So Ahadru Balgi Vitzai. So all the people of the city came out and they gave him all kinds of food. Rashi over here says, Sivavu B'nei Ha'ir. They surrounded him. The people of the city surrounded them. Vikifu Laginin Shel Devash Masiko Kara Shel Tavshin. They brought out all kinds of honey and sweet things and different kinds of cooked foods. So they gave a lot of food to Rabbi Yossi in order that he'd be able to recover. And so the Gemara says, Amarle Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda said to Rabbi Yossi, Aniki pachti asaroa. I forced the roa to give a little bit of food. Ve'ataki pachta es kol yerkula. You took food from the entire city. Vesu Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi have a kazli borch. Another story. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi, they were going on the road. Rabbi Meir have a daik b'shma. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi love a daik b'shma. Rabbi Meir used to be an expert in people's names. He would be able to tell by a person's name whether the person was a good person or a bad person. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, they didn't pay attention to that kind of issue. So kimatu lahu duchta, when they got to a certain place, bo ushpiza, they asked to find a host somewhere where they could stay. Yahavulhu, so they got a place to stay. Amrulo, they said to him, meaning the individual who was hosting, they said to him, Mashmech, what's your name? Amarlu Kidor, so he said, my name is Kidor. So Rabbi Meir said to himself, Shma Amino Adam Rashu, you see this person is a wicked person. Shenamar Kidor Tapuchos Hema. The word here, Kidor, sounds like Kidor. The idea is they were a generation that was a wicked generation. So too, he must be a wicked person. Rabbi Yehuda of Rabbi Yossi Ashlimu Lekisayu. So the story continues here. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, they gave their wallets to this individual to watch. Rabbi Meir lo Ashlim Lekise. Rabbi Meir didn't want to give the wallet because he didn't trust him. So Azal Osve Bekivre Deavua. Where did he put the wallet? He put it by the area where the father of the innkeeper, where he was buried. So it's Chazile Bechelme, Ta Shakal Kisa Demana Charesha Du Gavra. Now the innkeeper went to sleep, and that night he saw in a dream, his father came to him in a dream and said, there's a wallet that's right on top of where I'm buried. Go and take the wallet that's on top of the head of that individual, meaning myself. So his father basically gave him an indication where Rabbi Meir's wallet was to try to allow his son to steal the wallet. So Lamachar Amar Luhu. So then the next day he said to them, Hachi eschazili b'chamla. I just saw a dream that there seems to be a wallet by my father's grave. So Amri Lei, so they said to him, Chelma devei shimshi lesbo mamosha. When you have a dream bein hashmoshas of Shabbos, it's nothing to pay attention to. So they were trying to tell him, don't take this dream seriously. So the story continues. Azor Rabbi Meir v'natre kula Yoma. Nevertheless, Rabbi Meir thought that when they told him the dream was nothing, maybe he's not going to believe it. Maybe he'll go try to get the wallet. So Rabbi Meir stayed there the whole day in order to guard his money. V'yaise, and then he was able to bring back the wallet. Lamachar amrulo. So in any case, the story continues. The next day they said to the innkeeper, Havlam kisan, give us our wallets. So Amar Lui said to them, Lo hayu dvarim me'olam. You never gave me a wallet. So basically, he told Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, I never took anything from you. So Amar Lu Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir said to them, Amaylo dakisu b'shma. Why weren't you careful about this guy? Didn't you know his name? His name is Kidor. That indicated he's a bad person. Amrulei, they said to him, Amaylo amrid lan mar. So they said to Rabbi Meir, why didn't you tell us to be suspicious? Why did you keep this information to yourself? Amar Lu, he said back to them, Eimor damri anoch shasha. I had a concern, I had a suspicion. Achzuke me amri, did I know for certain? I'm not going to say bad about this person if I don't know for sure. We'll take a look at a couple Rashis over here. Ashlimu le kisayu, they gave their wallets to him Erev Shabbos. The idea over here was, it was Erev Shabbos. V'efkidu etzlo kisam, so they had to put their wallet somewhere. They figured he'll protect it. Devei shimshi, so they told him the dreams that you have, ben hashmoshes, shalar v'shabbosis, when you have a dream ben hashmoshes of Erev Shabbos, les bu mamoshe, it doesn't mean anything. Mitoch shadim b'menucha, because a person is at rest, a person is relaxing. On Shabbos, maharer v'roach alomos miskaven hoyelet choser shelo yelech v'yitlenu. So he sees all kinds of dreams, and their real intention over here, his real intention was to tell him, don't pay attention to the dream. That way he will persuade him not to try to get the wallet. In any case, the story continues. Mishchu va'ilu lechanusa. They then took this innkeeper and they dragged him to a store. They gave him wine. They forced him to drink some wine. And chazu ta'alfachi asvame. And when he drank the wine, they saw that there were some lentils on his mustache. So azlu v'yahavu simanu ledevisu v'shaklu lekisayu. So what they did was they went to his wife and they said, oh, your husband said we should get our wallets back, and he gave us a sign. The sign was that you guys ate lentils today. And so then she gave the wallets, they were able to get their wallets back. V'aisu azaliu v'katle. Now he got so angry, he went ahead, v'katle l'itase. He went ahead and he killed his wife for giving the wallets back. And the Gemara continues, Hainu d'Tanan, that's what we learned in the Mishnah. And the Masoras Hashas changes this to the Tanya, that which we learned in a Braisa, Mayim Rishonim Hachilu Besar Chazir, because of not paying attention to washing before you eat, it causes people to end up eating pork. Mayim Achronim Hargwes HaNefesh, and if you don't wash Mayim Achronim, it causes that somebody is killed. Rashi over here explains, Mayim rishonim hachilu besar chazir punduk Yisrael hayamocher liyisrael devarim hamutarim achilim hamocher lenachrim besar chazir mevushel. There was a case where there was a particular Jewish innkeeper. He used to give to the Jews, he would give them kosher food. To the non-Jews, he gave non-kosher food. So ba Yisrael punduk v'ra'u shalom natal yadav. There was once a Jew that came and didn't wash before he ate. So the innkeeper assumed the person was not Jewish. Keshahasev lechol v'nasan lefanav besar chazir. When he sat down to eat, so then the innkeeper gave him pork because the innkeeper thought that he wasn't actually Jewish. So that's a case where if a person is not careful about Mayim Rishonim, they might end up eating Basar Chazir. And Mayim Achronim, Hargu Es HaNefesh, if you're not careful about Mayim Achronim, it could lead to murder. That's our case. Zuhi Ishto Shel Zeh, this is the wife of this particular innkeeper. She'ilu Natal Mayim Achronim, had he washed his hands after his meal, Derech HaNot Lim Yodayim L'Kaneches Sefamam B'Yodayim Tovchos. What do you usually do? You usually wipe your mustache with your wet hands, you clean yourself off. V'lo Hayu Adashim Nirin. Then they wouldn't have seen the lentils, and they wouldn't have been able to get the wallet from the wife. And the Gemara continues, Ulevasov Havadaiki Bishma. In the end, even Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, they would be careful to look into a person's name to see whether they could be trusted or not. Kimatu Lahu Beisa, Deshmei Bola. One time they got to a house of an individual, and his name was Bola, so Lo Ailu Lagabe. They did not go to him, they didn't stay by him. Amri Shmami no Rashu. They said, you see from that name Bola, that the person is a Rasha, Dichsiv, like the Pasuk says. V'yamar LeBola Nu'ufim. It talks about the Bola, those who are worn out, and it talks about adultery. Therefore, it was an indication that this particular individual was not a good individual. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah, Misha Neshacho Kelev Shota V'chulu. It says, let's say you have somebody who was bit by a crazy dog. Tanur Rabban, and the rabbis taught Chamisha Dvarim Nemru B'Kelev Shota. There are 5 things that they say about a crazy dog. Piv Pasuach, it has its mouth open. V'riro Notef, its saliva is dripping. V'yaznav Sruchos, it has big floppy ears. Uznavo Munach Al Yarchosav, its tail is sitting on its legs. Umhalach Betzidei Derachim, and it walks at the side of the road. V'yeshomrim, some people say Af Novech Vein Kolo Nishma, barks, but you can't hear it. The Gemara says, Mimai Have, how does a dog become crazy? Rav Amar Nashim Keshvanios Mesachos Bo. Rav says it happens because women who are witches, they play with it. Ushmuel Amar Ruach Ra Shora Olav. Shmuel says that it has an evil spirit that rests upon it. Mai Beinayu. The Gemara says, what's the difference between these two opinions, the opinion of Rav and the opinion of Shmuel? And the Gemara says, Ika Beinayu. There is the following difference. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Dalid Amud Aleph.